Welcome to my channel Stars and Stripes Stories. Today, I'll take you on a journey that begins with an ordinary flight, filled with ordinary people, and ends with a revelation that no one on board could have ever imagined. So sit back, open your heart, and let this story remind you that sometimes, heroes don't wear uniforms until the moment they're needed. It was supposed to be just another routine flight from New York to London. Passengers were boarding with coffee in hand, headphones around their necks, and the usual rush of business suits, families, and students. In row 9, near the aisle, sat a woman who drew no attention. She wore a plain sweater, simple jeans, and had her hair pulled into a bun. She looked like any other traveler. To most, she was invisible. Her name was Claire. No one knew it yet, but Claire carried a past that was stitched with secrets even her fellow passengers could not imagine. As the engines roared and the plane lifted off, everything seemed normal. The cabin crew served drinks, the children in the back row cried for snacks, and the quiet hum of conversations filled the air. But at 30,000 feet, things began to change. The captain's calm voice over the intercom suddenly broke with a tension no one could mistake. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a technical issue. Please remain seated and stay calm." Most passengers thought little of it. Air travel, after all, sometimes came with turbulence and announcements like these. But then the plane lurched hard. The lights flickered, trays rattled, and gasps filled the cabin. Claire's eyes lifted from her book. She noticed the flight attendants exchanging looks that weren't rehearsed smiles but quiet fear. The captain's voice returned, tighter now, betraying the strain. "Cabin crew, secure the aircraft." A man in row 11 muttered, "Something's wrong. Real wrong." And he was right. The left engine had stalled, and worse, there were signs of a possible fire. The cockpit was scrambling, but there was more to the crisis than mechanical failure. What no one knew was that a threat had been transmitted just minutes before takeoff, an encrypted message about a possible sabotage attempt on this very flight. The captain, aware but bound by protocol, had kept silent. But now, desperation forced his hand. Claire closed her book and sat very still. Her heart raced, but not with panic. It was recognition. She knew the patterns, the signs, the whispers between crew. She had once lived in that world. But that was years ago. She had left it all behind. The plane jerked again, and gasps turned into prayers. Some passengers clutched hands, others dialed loved ones on Wi-Fi calls. Fear spread like wildfire. Then, something extraordinary happened. The captain left the cockpit, something pilots rarely do mid-crisis. He walked down the aisle, his face pale but determined. He scanned the rows as though searching for someone. His eyes stopped at row 9. The woman in the plain sweater. Claire. Passengers looked around in confusion as the captain leaned close, crouched beside her, and whispered two words that froze her in place. A code name. Shadow Viper. The cabin seemed to shrink into silence. Claire's eyes widened, her lips parting slightly. That name, her code name, had not been spoken in years. It belonged to a past buried deep, a past of missions carried out under the veil of night, of loyalty sworn not to country but to the lives she saved in silence. Passengers stared. "What's happening?" a man asked. But the captain said nothing more. He only looked at Claire with pleading eyes. Her hands trembled for a moment, then steadied. The world around her, the cries, the shaking plane, all of it dimmed as her training resurfaced like a tide she could not stop. She rose slowly, calmly, and for the first time the passengers noticed her presence not as a nobody, but as something different. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't afraid. She was stepping into herself. Claire followed the captain toward the front of the aircraft. Some whispered. Others watched in awe. The children stopped crying as if sensing something sacred was unfolding. Inside the cockpit, alarms screamed. The co-pilot fought the controls, sweat dripping down his face. The screens showed fire warnings, fuel imbalances, and a rapid loss of altitude. Claire slid into the jump seat, strapping herself in with practiced ease. She glanced at the controls and, in a voice steady as stone, began issuing instructions. Feather the left engine. Divert fuel line. Manual override on hydraulics. The co-pilot gawked. Who is she? The captain only said, "She's the reason we live." With hands that remembered every lever and switch, Claire guided them through the crisis. Her voice was calm, like a lighthouse in a storm. "Keep her nose up. We can glide her. But listen carefully, there's still a fire risk. We'll need to attempt an emergency descent. Minutes stretched like hours. The cabin shook, oxygen masks dangled, and prayers filled the air. Yet through it all, Row 9's nobody, Shadow Viper, was flying. At last, the distant outline of an airfield came into view. London wasn't possible, but an emergency strip in Ireland was. Claire calculated wind speed, descent angle, and flap control in her head, barking instructions with clarity that cut through chaos. The plane approached the strip, one engine gone, the other sputtering. Passengers braced, tears streaming down their faces. Some whispered goodbyes. Claire's hands tightened. Hold her steady. Keep faith. We're bringing them home. The landing was brutal. Tires screeched, metal groaned, and sparks flew. But against all odds, the aircraft slowed, shuddering down the runway until, finally, silence. They were alive. The cabin erupted in cries, laughter, and applause. People hugged strangers, kissed children, and sobbed into their hands. But when they turned to thank their savior, the woman who had stepped from anonymity into legend, she was gone. Claire had slipped quietly off the plane, blending back into the world as though she had never been there. To most, she would remain just a passenger in row 9. Just a nobody. But for the 318 souls on that flight, she was the reason they still breathed. And somewhere in the silence of the night, a captain sat alone, whispering the code name that would never be spoken again, Shadow Viper. Because sometimes, the greatest heroes are the ones we never see until the moment fate calls their name. Thank you for watching Stars and Stripes Stories. If this story touched you, if it made you feel the weight of courage and the quiet power of sacrifice, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that even in the darkest skies, light can appear in the unlikeliest of places.